Welcome to DisruptEDtv, where every little idea can make a big difference in your school, in your classroom. And our guest today is George Guy, who is the principal of Rosa International Middle School in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Welcome, George. And George's disruptive idea. George is here really today to talk about equity in the classroom, and he has a particular slant on it. And I think I want to bring us in by focusing on the button that you have in your lapel, No Place for Hate.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. We are a No Place for Hate school, a designation that's given to us by the Anti-Defamation League. We are the fourth school in our school district to have this designation. We had to do 3 projects last year in 2016 and 2017 to get this designation. The pivotal project that I want to talk a little bit about was we had students come to us because they were concerned about the use of the N-word in our hallways and in our lunchrooms. They were student leaders from our student council and from our peer leaders, and they worked collaboratively to come up with an innovative video that talked about the historicity of the word, the negative connotations around the word, and no matter what ethnicity you were, you didn't have the right to use the word in school settings because of the harmful connotations that it has had in the past and in the present. And that was one of the huge things that allowed us to become a No Place for Hate designation, because we think that that word in and of itself has a lot of hateful historicity around it. And we were so excited that our students came to us as adults and said, look, this is something that we can't tolerate as a potential national school of character in which we want to be active citizens, we want to be respectful, and we want to be responsible of one another and one another's feelings.
So that designation was student-led?
All 3 of the projects had to be student-led and student-designed, and that pivotal one was we were very, very excited that that was student-led, that we as adults notice these things all the time in a middle school. But when kids come to us and put feet and legs to what they notice, put an action plan, put things together, they even included me as with a 30-second snippet in the at the end of the video to kind of reinforce some of the things that they needed to do from a school administration standpoint. When students are doing that, that kind of tells you that those moral and ethical mores around respect and responsibility and active citizenship that you're trying to teach kids in your developmental advisory programs and throughout your content and curriculum are really coming to shape, and they are really coming to bear. So that's very, very important.
See, that's, to me anyway, that's a focus on the concept of equity. We've had other guests on DisruptEDtv who've talked about equity and social justice in the classroom and in the school.
Yes.
And your particular angle on that whole subject is it's really a matter of positively reinforcing the good behaviors and not tolerating the bad behaviors.
That's definitely one way to look at equity. I mean, when we talk about that designation, we talk about that particular initiative, we looked at students and what they did. And we reinforce that behavior. What the good thing I think when we talk about equity is what happened after that video. That video was shown in advisory programs. We have a 40-minute advisory period every day. And it was reinforced by teachers having discussions, having conversations. So what we were able to do is we were able to take our harassment, intimidation, and bullying data from that point and see a decline.
And see a decline in all of that.
In all of that, in how kids were treating one another, what kinds of names they were saying to one another. So we saw a decline from the period in which we implemented that video and all of the supports around it to moving beyond that. So I think that's important, especially from a school administration standpoint, because you want the kids to be able to do this, but realistically as a school administrator, you want to see a decline in future action around that, the use of that term and other terms that are derogatory, that trigger our harassment, intimidation.
That, you know, that is so important. And you came up with, or the students came up with such a really creative, innovative way to approach it.
Yes.
They made a video. They explained in the video how you can hurt people by using words like that. And then they circulated that video and made it available to everybody else in the school, so that that's the lesson that they all kind of offered to each other.
They did. It was absolutely incredible. Our superintendent was aware of it, was and signed off on it, was excited about it, and had opportunities to come to roundtables and speak with the kids about the work that they were doing. So it was really a collaborative effort. And as I said, when you see the harassment, intimidation, and bullying cases and investigations actually go down, you want to make causal relations and say that work that was done and triggered by and initiated by students had some effect on how students begin to look and interact and deal with one another in a more equitable manner.
In a more equitable manner.
How did the parents react to that?
I think the parents have been excited about it. We shared it with our Parent-Teacher Association. We showed them the video. When folks come to our school to try and look and see whether or not Rosa is a viable option for us, they are able to go to that video because it's on the homepage and see the kind of work and see the kind of respect and responsibility that their kids are going to be engaged within as they become the next student council members, as they become the next peer leaders, as they look at the next issue that Rosa is going to be dealing with that needs to be addressed in such a incredible way.
I think what's great about this idea to me is that there are plenty of anti-bullying videos, and there are probably plenty of language and labeling each other and marginalizing students' videos.
Yes.
But when you make a video in your own school with your own students in your own community, it's not just a video, it's a commitment to change behavior that everybody who participates in making that video has made.
I definitely agree. And I think we really have to give a lot of kudos to the teachers that were involved, the student council advisors, and the peer leader advisors who worked collaboratively to help the kids with the video, to flesh out the ideas, to flesh out the follow-up questions that the 65 teachers in their advisories, after they show the video, what kinds of conversations are those going to trigger? In what way do we want those conversations to be able to move forward? So that kids are realistically not just talking about the video, but talking about instances so that when they're out in the hallway, when they're in the lunchroom, when they're in spaces in which there's no adult supervision, and they really have to pull on that moral and ethical fiber that we're hoping the video begins to engender within them, they make the choice that we want them to be able to make. So there were a lot of adults that did a lot of work in support of those peer leaders and those student council members to be able to make that happen.
And the nice thing about that video is timeless.
That is correct.
That video lasts forever. But if you made one every couple of years and got new students to participate, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea.
We're hoping that, you guys bring up an excellent point that I'd love to take back to our staff, because there are still other concerns from an equity standpoint. We talked about, before the show, sexual identity as being an issue that people are struggling with, especially this age grade between 11 and 14. The next video could begin to deal with that. And begin to address the issues around sexual identity that many of our students at the middle level are struggling with, and we really want them, from an equitable standpoint, to be able to come into a safe space like our schools and have equal opportunities to be able to be their authentic selves and to be able to get the support that they need from the caring adults, because that's what we call our 65 teachers at our building level, the caring adults, and from their peers, to be able to give them the support and the tools that they need to be able to support kids who are questioning sexual identity and questioning other areas of their lives.
That's great. We need to take a break. When we come back, though, let's talk a little bit more about those dynamics.
Sure.
Because we're talking about the entire school community and potentially parents too.
Definitely.
So we'll be right back with more of this conversation with George Guy after this break on DisruptEDtv.
They come to Brookdale with a passion for healthcare, cybersecurity, fashion merchandising. They graduate and transfer to universities like Georgetown, NJIT, and the Fashion Institute of Technology. They begin their careers as registered nurses, security engineers, and fashion designers. This is what success looks like, and here is where it all starts. This is Brookdale, college redefined, success reimagined. Take your next step at brookdalecc.edu.
Welcome back to DisruptEDtv. My name is Al Cini,
I'm Joe Osamendi.
and our guest is a terrific guest, George Guy, who is the principal of the Rosa International Middle School. And I'm going to highlight middle because during the break we were talking about how many children experience their first difficulties with problems like the ones we discussed in that first segment during the middle school years when children's instincts have not yet caught up with their governing cognitive abilities to manage that.
Yes.
And that's why so much of what you're talking about resonates with me, because I think my kids would have had a better experience in middle school if their middle school had had that kind of a focus on equity and social justice.
Right.
So you mentioned a phrase, and it's upstander versus bystander. Could you maybe talk about that a little bit?
So we got the phrase from Matt Davidson, who owns a character education company at a University of Syracuse. He came to our district several years ago, and he talked with our adults about really encouraging kids at the middle level, because as you said, developmentally they're still in a group mindset. So between 11 and 14, encouraging them and challenging them, because 11 to 14-year-olds love a good challenge. What does it mean to be a upstander as opposed to a bystander? And our leadership students last year, those peer leaders and those student council members were upstanders because they had gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired of hearing the derogatory use of that phrase in those areas where they knew there weren't adults. And they took it upon themselves to be upstanders and come to us, and they didn't just come and complain. They said, this is one of the things that we think we can do. We think peer-to-peer 11 to 14-year-olds will listen to other 11 to 14-year-olds before they listen to you, Mr. Guy. Because you'll have an assembly on this, and you'll say something, and for 2 weeks, everyone will mind the administrative code, and they'll pay attention to you. But we think that it'll make more of an impact if they see their own peers being upstandards as opposed to bystanders, and talking about the historicity of the N-word, its negative connotations, and how socially, emotionally it can do damage to our psyches, and that we are just not going to put up with that. So those group of upstanders came and were role models, and I want to believe they proliferated and made other upstanders who were probably bystanders before. And I think that's the whole role of middle school and groupthink, is that if we can get them to think as a group to be more upstanders than bystanders, then some of the things that we see from an harassment, intimidation, and bullying area will begin to dissipate. Will it ever leave? Probably not. But I think if we can lessen it to certain degrees and get kids, because we know that we're on the pre-K to 16 continuum. And if we can, even if we didn't get that kid who might be involved in bullying to stop saying that word, somewhere along the lines, those upstanders making that point about that video and about the lessons and all the things that went along with that, maybe they'll get that in their 8th grade year, their 9th grade year, their 10th grade year. Maybe they'll reflect back on that and they'll be able to say, hey, this is something that I really need to do in my life as an upstander. As
It
opposed
will
to
also
a
give
bystander.
that concept sustainability because they're doing it.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean,
That's correct.
because it's them, and it's
Right.
it's
Exactly.
not given to them by somebody in Washington or Trenton.
Correct.
They came up with this on their own. I think that's just so
They'll
powerful.
sustain it.
Definitely.
So I'll ask you simple questions. I think I know the answers. Doesn't cost a lot of money.
Doesn't cost a lot of money.
Didn't take a lot of time.
Didn't take a lot of time.
So a principal that's watching this program, a middle school principal,
Yes.
who's watching this program, who might be facing some of these issues, can address these issues with a video that their own students produce.
Definitely, definitely.
And-
I would say that put your students in positions to be upstanders. Now, one of the things that we did was we opened up, and this comes from our superintendent down, we opened up opportunities to talk with kids on a monthly basis. So we're having town hall meetings so that we can have opportunities. So, because oftentimes kids feel like, I'm not necessarily going to talk to the principal. If I land in the principal's office and my parents find out about it, that's probably not the best thing. So you want to, if you're a middle school principal, if you're a teacher, a classroom teacher, you want to put yourself in a position in which you're having social, emotional conversations with kids. Russ Qualia, who is a doctor down in Florida who's working with our school school district now, talks about the importance of student voice. So if you provide opportunities for student voice and then you hear this upstander language from your leadership teams, then you can use resources that are, most of us have school cameras or we have our own videos in which we're able to make these types of movies and put them out. But I would also say, though, that you've got to enlist your teachers to come along with you if you're a principal to say, what do we do once the video is ended, because that was only about 7 or 8 minutes, and the conversations are gestating in those classrooms.
In those classrooms,
You know,
how do we facilitate those
because
discussions?
those conversations could go
yeah.
many different ways. How do we make sure that we have trained staff that are willing and have follow-up questions and answers and resources for 11 to 14-year-olds to put them in the framework of being upstanders as opposed to bystanders?
That's great. So on the day that you released this video and made it available to the school, you had prepared in advance to make sure that there were people who knew that this video was going to be shown and who had practiced facilitating the discussions that it might trigger.
That's definitely correct. We had 2 of our student council members and 2 of our student council advisors and 2 of our peer leader advisors collaborate together on a group of questions that were given out to the advisors, those 65 staff members, a week in advance. And then they made themselves available, as well as myself, to talk with them about the potential questions or concerns that could come up. And we were thankful we didn't get any emails that night. We didn't get any phone calls after the video went out. And as I said, over the months, as we looked at our data, we saw that the dissipation of HIB cases, especially with using that word, began to dissipate.
Oh, well, that's terrific. I mean, that did make that really introduces the broader subject of equity and social justice in general. And we need to take a break, and these breaks always come at such terrible times because, but your whole concept of social justice as a dynamic system within the student,
Yes.
where you're creating that sense of justice inside the student, where the behavior actually happens.
Right.
I think that's just so powerful. And when we come back after the break, I want to talk with you some more about that.
No problem.
So back with more DisruptEDtv after this break and more of a conversation with George Guy.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere.
I went to college right after high school, but it didn't work out. After a few years in the workforce and the birth of my son, I decided to give college another try. At Brookdale, something clicked. I met amazing professors and found a major I was passionate about. I made the dean's list, landed a great internship, and now I'm pursuing my bachelor's degree. Thanks to Brookdale, I have what it takes to see my dreams through. I'm Tara Boyce, and I came to Brookdale to give college another try. I never imagined I would find my passion.
Absolutely, welcome back. Welcome back to DisruptEDtv. My name is Alcine.
I'm Joe Asamendi.
And our guest is George Guy of the Rosa International Middle School. And I want to make a point. We've discussed a video that was produced in the school by the students at Rosa International.
Yes.
And we're not showing that video for a couple of reasons. One is it's 8 minutes long, so it's pretty lengthy. The second is it's a frank and honest video that is personal within the school. It was created by the students of the school.
Yes.
But if you'd like to see it, we're going to have some information for you later in the program that George is going to share.
Definitely.
So you can go and watch the video to get ideas on how you can produce a video like that.
Definitely.
And just before the break, George, we were talking about the concept of social justice. And I mean, it's a high-minded concept, and it seems like the kind of thing everybody would want.
Yes.
But you're talking about it as a practitioner, in the trenches, in a sense.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the practice of social justice, not just the theory of it.
Right. So I think when we talk about this video that we made and we talk about upstanders and bystanders, I think you have to be able to set the climate and culture of your school to be able to have these conversations. So from a social justice standpoint, Rosa International Middle School, and I believe Cherry Hill Public Schools has always tried to have tough conversations. And because we could have easily shied away when the students came to us, and when they came up with a student-led upstander type solution, we could have made it more adult driven at that point, and we could have subjugated their voices, because we thought that this was a prickly, and it is a volatile and prickly topic when you're talking about the use of that term and other terms like it. But we think that we've cultivated a climate in our school and our school districts in which the caring adults understand the need for us to have frank conversations about the use of that term and other terms, and what goes along with those terms. What kind of baggage is ensued with that term? What kinds of emotions does that do to certain folks, to African Americans or non-African Americans? So I think from a social justice standpoint, what we try to do is we try to create a climate for the educators in our schools, and I guess this is for principals and teachers as well, in which those types of dialogues are not subjugated, that the upstanders will get their due and their voice in very meaningful ways. And I think that's the practicality of social justice.
Well, you allow the conversation about the behavior, but you don't tolerate the behavior.
You do not tolerate the behavior. There have to be lines of demarcation around the toleration of that kind of behavior. But when upstandards are saying we're not going to tolerate that behavior, it is much more meaningful and sustainable with regards to an intervention that you can put in place that's very different than an adult-led intervention.
Students are policing each other.
They are policing each other.
Exciting. I think that's what makes this such a sustainable, as you said, Joe.
And that video is also produced by students across all lines, ethnic, economic, whatever.
Correct.
So it wasn't just
It's
a
got
group
all
of
kinds
leaders.
of
It was
kids.
everybody.
Correct. So there were ethnically diverse students, there were academically diverse students, there were socioeconomically diverse students, there were socially and emotionally diverse students. So these could have been students who had individual education plans that were a part of this endeavor and a part of this video and a part of this sustained solution to be upstandards and to not tolerate the use of this word by their peers, to not only just make an example and to do a video just for posterity, but to do something meaningful, to put feet and legs to problem solving. And I think when we talk about college and career ready adults, that is something that realistically we want to be able to send kids to high school and beyond with that moral and ethical fiber that is undergirded with social justice. When they walk through the door, they already had the social justice frame that their parents, their loved ones, their environment has helped cultivate with them. All I think we did at the school level was to help kind of spread wings to that, give voice to that, as we talked about student voice, so that they could say that when we come to adults and we want to solve our problems, they give us the mechanisms to be able to support us, but they ultimately tell us that we're going to solve the problems, and they understand too that there are lines of demarcation, that this is right and this is wrong, and this is what we're going to tolerate with.
You gave them a platform to express that. That's really important.
And that's
Definitely.
Real important.
Definitely.
So before you embarked on this project, it sounds like a great project. Obviously, you got the buy-in of the teachers.
Yes.
The students actually initiated this whole thing.
They did.
To a large extent.
They
So,
did.
so they were automatically read in on it.
They were.
You, as the principal, had to approve it, understand where it was going, and approve it.
And get approval for
And
it.
get approval for it from your superintendent.
Right.
So that's all the groundwork that has to be laid. What about school board? Does the school board need to be involved in this?
School board was made aware of it through superintendent's weekly updates and things of that nature.
And how did they respond to it?
And they responded incredibly. Our school board president's daughter was a part of the video
wow.
and was one of the proliferators, upstanders who came to us and had a concern around that. So it doesn't get any closer than that.
No, it doesn't.
So
I mean, that's great.
our school boards are a part of our local communities, and they want to know where student voice is being enacted to make a difference, to problem solve in our schools and our school districts. So that's what I would say to school board members that may be watching, that there are opportunities within, from a classroom setting and other areas in which you want to be able to work with administrators or ask about opportunities for where student voice is being seen in the schools and the school districts in which you serve as a school board member.
And that's how you get equity and social justice.
You do.
Because you build it at the grassroots where it lives rather than impose it from above as an
Correct.
authority.
Correct.
And I think that is just, this is probably a good opportunity for you maybe to talk a little bit about Rosa International Middle School. We really haven't talked about the school. So.
Sure. So Rosa International Middle School is one of 3 middle schools in Cherry Hill. It is an open enrollment school. We have close to 800 kids. We are an international baccalaureate school, and we support the middle years program. We're one of the few middle year program schools in the state of New Jersey. We are very excited about the opportunities that the middle years program affords us, because when we talk about all of the coursework and all of the frameworks that the middle years program provides, one of the provisions of the middle years program, and it talks about learner profiles, is a risk taker. So those upstanders were risk takers. They took an incredible risk to see a problem, to come to us with the problem, and then to provide resources and support around the problem. And then the risk that they also took was, how were those peers that may have been their friends that were saying those hateful words, how were they going to react to them? Were they going to continue to stay in relationship with them? And even if they weren't, they still took an incredible risk and followed through with what they needed to do anyway. And that's a part of our middle years learner profile as an international baccalaureate school.
Now, everything that you just described is the profile of a hero. And I
Yes.
think what you really did was give a lot of the kids in your school, your kids took the opportunity to become heroes in your school, and you let that happen. And I think that's the magic of it.
Yeah.
We're at that part of our program now where you get to tell everybody how to reach you so that you can explain how they can make this kind of magic happen inside their school.
Excellent.
So go ahead and use your camera.
Thank you so much. So if you want to reach me at Rosa International Middle School, my email address is gguy@chclc.org. If you're interested in viewing the video, you can reach us at www.rosa.chclc.org. If you scroll down to latest videos, that video and the use of the N-word is the #1 video, and you'll be able to see that it is in public domain. Also, I'm an educational consultant for New Jersey Principals Association and the Foundation for Education Administration. If you're interested in some of the work that I do around sustainable, equitable outcomes for all students, you can go to www.njpsa.org and ask for George Guy, or you can email me there. I'm at Twitter at GuyJr80, and I'm at Instagram at Rims Principal. So I think that's
you're one of the most reachable people I've ever met. George Guy, what a pleasure having you on the
Thank you so
program.
much.
That was terrific. And I mean, you were a great guest, but you were also, I think, a terrific resource to everybody who's watching our program, who might want to use some of the ideas that George shared with us.
And plus, you
today.
showed how
Terrific.
ordinary students can do extraordinary things. That's
And
important.
that, I think, is such a great point. It's a great way to close the program. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of DisruptEDtv. My name is Alcini.
Still Joe Osamendi.
And you will be again. And
Yes, I will.
you'll be joining us again soon, too, on DisruptEDtv.
Thanks so much. See you next time.
Thank you so much, guys.
That was
Thank you,
dynamite.
George. You were
It
great.
was absolutely
Thank you.
terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.